what it sound like. Your boy One Shot Spittoon, featuring my nigga 456 Trips. $1 Million Manny on the keys. What it sound like.
Street ball, stacks 10 feet tall, set goals and reach all, make moves like Booger Smith, plates of the food they ain't cooking with, street ball.
What does it mean to be an underground street ball legend? Better question, what is it worth? Not much monetarily, but in other ways it means your name lives on and is passed down from one generation of hoopers to another. It means really your art never dies and will arguably get bigger when you do. It's important to understand the bright spots in basketball that reside on the other side of the worldwide fame and money and learn what they had to endure in their time and how they did or didn't make it out. Today's feature is one that never made it out. Not in your eyes, but in the streets, that word legend couldn't be more fitting. Let's get into it. Ed Booger Smith. Salute to my man One Shot Spittoon for this request. Link to the song and video used throughout this feature below. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. The story of Booger Smith begins in Brooklyn, New York, a place in the 90s where nothing was more popular than street ball if you grew up in the area Smith was from. Like many inner city kids' story, the upbringing wasn't far different for Booger. Violence, drugs, poverty to an extent, a lot of failed talents, and people trying to recover from a bad decision made earlier that people like us don't get a second chance at. Many of these street elements got a hold and followed Booger and would somewhat be a detriment to his growth in one way or the other. Here are 3 reasons the name Booger Smith never got shouted on the world stage. Stunt number 1, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Nowadays, if you wanted to make it to the NBA, if you really wanted to make it, were disciplined enough, focused enough, and refined your work ethic, you could get there a lot easier than in the era Booger Smith grew up in. With Instagram and YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and more, you have so many avenues at your disposal to get someone to take a look at your game and see what you bring to the table. In the 90s, it was all word of mouth, and you following a very specific path of getting there. A path that the gatekeepers like Steve Bardo could be satisfied with and allow you a chance. Only the disciplined survive the path filled with landmines of distractions, lacking in school, boosters, wrong school, attitude, politics. It was a lot to deal with, and many really good talents fell through the cracks and wasn't able to navigate that path. One very important aspect of making it through is doing what you're supposed to do in school and staying focused on having a great attitude. Smith was as talented a point guard as they came, but for him, school really didn't matter much because of the school he chose to go to for high school that passed him even when he didn't show up. Because of this, he developed bad habits of not working hard in the class and not learning the importance of showing up and being on time. He grew up without his father, so to help his mother, he turned to selling drugs in the streets at 12 years old. He said that while he hooped at the park, fiends would line up waiting for him to finish and be served. By 14, he was pretty much homeless, sleeping with a friend here, a friend there, until he went to live with Kenny King's coach Kenny Jones, also one of the stars of the famed street classic Soul in the Hole. It was hard to focus on that basketball dream everyone was selling you when you know outside there's some money you can make right now. There's also no pressure to be as successful as everyone else thinks you can be. Here on the streets, you can just be you. You can talk shit all day, hang with the fellas, laugh and joke, and make a few $100s in a day. To some, sounds a lot better than not drinking, not smoking, living on the basketball court, no girls, rarely seeing the parties and get-togethers, and just focusing on a dream. Nowadays, you have a picture all over social media of what you want and how to get there. For Ed in the 90s, being a street basketball legend wasn't so bad. He would drop out of high school and stayed in the streets, keeping one foot in his basketball hopes. But that's just not how the game goes. For Smith, to me, this was his first growth stunt. Stunt number 2, not going back. After Booger Smith dropped out of high school, he began to take the streets a lot more serious, being that at that point, it's all he had. It's when Soul in the Hole approached him to do a story. Initially, it was meant to be about God Shamgod, Kareem Reed, and himself, and more. Upon seeing and meeting Booger, they decided to focus on his story and curate the movie around his life. Because of the movie and a little initiative from his unofficial guardian, Kenny Jones, he was able to achieve a scholarship from Arizona Western, a junior college where he reluctantly attended for just a season and averaged 23 points and 12 assists. After that season of playing, Smith returned home to New York for the summer and began to get in trouble in the streets that had him on the run from authorities. He decided not to go back to school until years later when he was out of shape, causing the team to send him back home. Had Smith kept it together and understood the opportunity he had, he could have been right alongside Rafer Alston, taking the junior college route, eventually to Division I and maybe even the NBA. Like mentioned, in those times, following a certain path to the league was one of the major politics of making it to the NBA, and Ed didn't see that at the time. He fell to street influences and didn't have the guidance he needed to get him back in school and back on track.
No looks, too much for you slow rooks. Ain't even crossover, leave them so shook. Known crooks, no use for corner store jokes. That's obsolete as a phone book. Street ball.
Stunt number 3, self-hindrance. In an interview with Kenny Jones, when asked why he thinks Smith never made it, he said he thinks Booger Smith was afraid of success. And not in a way where he was afraid of making millions and becoming a household name, but because he was afraid of what it would take to get there. After researching his story, it does seem that Booger didn't have the understanding or the self-drive that you need in order to get over the hurdles in that era of placing yourself in all the right places for it to happen. A lot of that was because of him not fully leaving the streets and being comfortable with what he had already attained as far as notoriety. In 1997, Sports Illustrated placed Booger Smith on its cover and deemed him the king of the streets. It was unheard of at that time, and I think Smith became content with that title and what it meant. He would appear in movies like He Got Game, Nike commercials, video games, and even played in open gyms with Michael Jordan. He had a lot of opportunities to capitalize on his street success, but for whatever reason, he decided not to pursue those fully. A quiet guy that seems as though he doesn't always realize what he could have done, and time passed him by. Nowadays, Booger Smith is still in Brooklyn, still holding on to the fame and legendary status he acquired in the streets and a mythical name for his accomplishments and what-if story. To be fair, making it to the NBA is very circumstantial, and sometimes your circumstance prohibits you from getting there. Circumstance was a huge factor in Booger's story. Had these things not happened, who knows what he could have been on the NBA level. Salute to him, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.
Like Booger Smith, plates of the food they ain't cooking with. Street ball, stacks 10 feet tall, set goals, and we reach all, make moves. Like Shamgod, young boys turn dope into scam cards.